different documents where they're stored and where they're, who's got them and who doesn't have them, where they're stored. So we use cloud storage a lot because it allows me to work remotely, so I can work on any device from anywhere. But I'm not going to go back to the office to get a file or to access a file if I'm out with a client or meeting a client. Project and time management, we'll be covering the various different tools there. Again, the very simple tool I use is Excel, which we're all very familiar with. And I use Excel because it's easier to have everything in one location, but there is time management apps and tools that we also have used, are using, have used. So I'll go through those with you as well. Bookkeeping. So even though you might be outsourcing your books to an accountant, your financial stuff to an accountant in terms of doing your returns, you might have an administrator or treasurer in your organization that's doing the managing money in, money out. But I would encourage you that if you are, if you're not using any bookkeeping software at the moment, that you do use some form of bookkeeping software. Primarily, not so much from a returns point of view from your accounts, it's more from a reporting point of view. So a lot of you are going to be doing lots of reports back to your funders, back to your boards, back to your obviously to your accountants for revenue purposes, and you will be also using your reports and your accounts if you're applying for grants. So a lot of groups they struggle when they're applying for grant, they don't have any up-to-date management accounts, for example. So they're kind of frantically putting together kind of an income and expenditure report in time to have it ready to submit for grant application. By using a bookkeeping software and you're inputting your information in terms of money in, money out every week, that reporting is pretty much done at the kind of the click of the switch when you want those reports to be generated. So even though you might be using it from an accounts point of view, it's a really good thing to do from a reporting point of view. And I'll talk through to some of the paid platforms are there, and also the free ones that I use or have used in the past as well. Digital marketing is endless in terms of where you start and where you finish. But again, I'll be looking at in terms of what community voluntary organizations and not-for-profit organizations should be doing in terms of online marketing. So looking at obviously social media platforms, looking at email marketing campaigns, and looking at your websites as well, and having your online presence and have a proper website for your organization. We look at design. So again, a lot of you will be doing different events, fundraisers, posters, flyers, annual reports, documentation, doing presentations. And there's some very, very good design tools out there that kind of help you with doing those. So rather than having to go and spend money with graphic designers every time you want to get something done, which can be costly, there is some cheap and free design tools that we use that work fine, and we just save you a bit of money. Video conferencing I mentioned this morning briefly because we are covering it in a lot more detail in the next workshop. But again, we'll be going through the importance of now using video conferencing, even though we're kind of out of COVID. It's still, as I said, something that's going to be here to stay. And then just kind of going through the various other online tools and services that we use and my clients use that are just will lead to more efficiency and more being more effective in your organization. So I suppose the key thing really is, look, a lot of organizations, or a lot of people, they don't, and like I'm one of them. I'm not an IT person at all. I'm not some sort of guru when it comes to technology, but I've learned, the hard way in some cases that, you have to kind of, use some element of technology in your business. And I suppose during the first phase of lockdown, in my own business, I had to move everything online. And I was online, obviously, with a website, and we were using social media to point. We weren't using video conferencing. We weren't using that many online tools. And then with lockdown, then we kind of had to quickly learn to use a lot of these things. So, and what I found with my own business is that working with projects remotely, so if we're working with clients outside of Kerry, whether it be in Limerick, Laois, Cork, wherever, by working remotely, you get an awful lot more done. It works way better if you've got a project team that you're working with. So if you have a project team that is involved yourselves, maybe if you're doing a building project, a design team. In my case, I'll have a design team, I'll have the client, their team, and also other stakeholders involved as well. By having regular meetings online, by using project management tools where people can collaborate on those tools in terms of inputting into the information for the project, it just speeds up things really, really quickly. It makes them way more efficient, way more effective. The other thing it does as well is it creates a kind of a data trail or kind of a paper trail for your projects. So a lot of groups, when they're meeting face to face, their minute taking is poor at best. They're not taking any notes, not recording anything properly. And then when it comes to actually, looking back in terms of what was done, what was supposed to be done, there's very, very little proper recording of that. If you're doing work online where you've got maybe you're recording like a meeting like this, or you're just using a project management piece of software where you're inputting information on the actual app itself in terms of tasks and actions and who you're delegating work to, it does allow you to have that very detailed reporting there. So I use it a lot from my point of view, because if I'm working with a client, I need to make sure that if I'm supposed to be something that is done, or if they're supposed to be doing something that's done, or if the design team is supposed to be doing something is done. And it's very important to track that. So if that's just face-to-face meetings, over a cup of coffee, someone's taking a few notes, it's not really done properly, that can cause problems down the line. So again, it's really, this morning is not about how to use each piece of technology and go into the detail in terms of the technical side of it. It's more making you aware of the type of technology that's out there, and then picking one that you like, and then just learning how to use that, or deciding not to use it, or if you want to find out more, there is tutorials and stuff how to use these. So I'm not going to go into technical detail on each of these, because we'll be here for 3 days if we do, and it can be kind of boring when you're actually going into kind of how to use these things. It's more around identifying the ones that are easy to use and showing you that they exist. Okay, so file cloud storage. So like, you're all more than likely familiar with this in terms of you're using it to some level, where you're storing your files on like a Dropbox or OneDrive or Google Drive. Okay, so a lot of us now are using our tablets and our mobile phones for work purposes, where we're storing things to the cloud. Okay, where it becomes important from a not-for-profit sector organization or a community voluntary organization with volunteers, where you have a number of people involved in the organization. So you might have like your coordinator, you might have an administrator, chairperson, treasurer, secretary, or you might have no paid staff, which is purely led by volunteers. What happens is when you're storing information, your files, like your company details, your accounts details, your policies and procedures, all that should be all in digital format, stored somewhere. Okay. And in my experience dealing with groups over the years, when you need this information, when you need to get these files for a grant application, and I might be doing a grant application with them, I'll ask them, okay, do you have a copy of your memo and actors association? Have you got a copy of your annual report? Have you got a copy of your annual accounts? Very often people come back saying, geez, we do, but we don't know where they are. We don't know who has them. I think the accountant has them, maybe the solicitor has them, maybe Joe has them, but your Joe's on holidays and we don't know where Joe is. The problem then is you don't have access to it. Okay, so by putting something in the cloud in terms of giving general access to it to designated people within your organization, anyone can go in and basically get that file and download the file and share the file. So that's why it's important. Secondly, is that there's been, I don't know how many examples, including my own business, where your laptop is being destroyed or lost or damaged, and everything's on your hard drive. And if everything's on the hard drive and your laptop is stolen, that means your life, pretty much what's on your hard drive, is gone. And you can't recover that if it's not backed up anywhere. Okay, so then people use USB sticks, which are great. They're very handy, but they get lost very, very easily. They get damaged very easily. So again, if everything you have that's relating to your organization in terms of all your important documentation and files are on a USB stick, if that's missing, then that's gone. They're not backed up. So cloud storage is useful from the point of view of sharing files with your team, and have access to it on all devices. So if you're at home on a tablet, on a laptop, on your phone, and you need to access something quickly, you can go in and access it. But it's also very important from a backup point of view. So when you are looking at a cloud storage solution, and you might be using some already, probably are some using some, again, check in terms of how easy they are to sync, in terms of that they're backed up automatically to the cloud. So if you're doing work on a Word document, doing a report, for example, then you save that. It's not just saved to your hard drive, it's saved to the cloud. So it's accessible on all devices. Check the security in terms of encryption. So again, a lot of your documentation, there'll be GDPR sensitive, there'll be financially sensitive information, there'll be legally sensitive information in some cases. Again, make sure that those, that you're picking the solution that's as the most secure. No, not all of them are, there's none of them are kind of bulletproof in terms of security, but most of them are kind of standard kind of platforms that everyone uses anyway, so they are secure to a point. But again, if it's something that's worrying you as an organization, again, get some advice from that from some IT consultants or some professionals in the area to just ask which one you should be using. So the ones I've used, the ones I've used, primarily I use Google Drive. I am currently in the process of switching everything to OneDrive, and I should have been using OneDrive all along because I use all Microsoft applications. So it would make more sense for me to be on OneDrive. But anyway, I'm on Google Drive, and I'm now in the process of transferring everything over to OneDrive. And I'm looking at, I've actually got someone looking at this for me in terms of doing the transfer and then show me the sync up, the sync functions, and also making sure they're backed up properly. Because again, my life is pretty much on, and my business is pretty much on this laptop. So if anything happens to it and it's not backed up, that's serious implications for me in terms of my business. So I've used Dropbox as well. I don't use Dropbox anymore, but I have used in the past, and you might be familiar with all these. Again, you're getting a decent amount of storage with all of them. If you are using Microsoft applications a lot, OneDrive is the one to go with. If you are using Google's applications a lot, like Google Forms, Google Docs, Gmail, Google Calendar, all the kind of the Google platforms, Google Drive is probably the one to go with. Dropbox as well, if you're comfortable with that, you can use that also. The key thing really is to make sure they're backed up, because a lot of people are using the drives on their hard drive, but they're not actually backed up and stored in the cloud. So even though they think they are using OneDrive, they have to be backed up to the cloud storage so you can access them. Again, that's the whole purpose with this, is that they're accessible by everyone when they need them, and they're backed up automatically. I suppose they are useful in terms of, again, from terms of file sharing. So we do a lot of work with architects, primarily around projects, and their files can be huge in terms of their CAD files and that. So normally they'll be sending us their files via a link to their Dropbox link or their OneDrive link, so we can access the files rather than email them. Again, in terms of if you're working with a team, and like you all will be, so you're there's no one here that's working on your own. You're working as part of an organization, whether with staff or with volunteers. Again, it's allowing you to access specific files, so they can access larger files when they need them. Again, if you're working, say, with designers or videographers for on your projects, again, they'll use these shared drives to share large format files like video files. Again, you don't have to worry about running out of space. So you are going to have like a lot more space here in terms of file storage. So you're not going to clog your hard drive with a lot of big files. But the key thing really is that, from my point of view, is that it's so much easier when you're working as part of a team that people have access to it, rather than trying to find out who's got a file, who hasn't got a file. You know where it is and you know where it's stored. Again, like everything else and everything that's been talking about this morning, these things only work if they're updated and they're actually done properly. So there's no point having a subscription to OneDrive if you forget to actually back it up to OneDrive. So if you save it on your hard drive and you think it's already backed up, and then someone goes to access it, remotely for the day before an application has to go in and they can't find it because it's not there, you must make sure that you're using these things properly as well. Okay, so that's your cloud storage solutions. Again, not going into detail on all of them in terms of how they work and how they don't work. It's more around making you aware of them and seeing which one suits you if you're not already using them. Okay, and sometimes, well, look, it's probably worthwhile, and I certainly do. If I'm looking to use any sort of tools to make my business more efficient, more effective, I just talk to someone who specializes in these things and get them to say, okay, this is what we recommend. And in some cases, I would get them to set it up for me as well. Because then it's done right, it's done correctly. Sometimes, people can do it DIY, they'll do tutorials on it, they're trying to figure it out themselves, and it might work, but they might be using, everything they can be. They might be maximizing the benefits of the apps, because they're just using the bare minimum because that's all they understand. So in some cases, it's probably worthwhile bringing someone in that's working in IT or does IT support or IT maintenance or just, that sets up these things for you, and get them in for half a morning and say, okay, basically automate our office for us and get everything, put everything up that we need to done, show us how to use it, and it's done correctly then. So there's companies out there who do that for you, and sometimes worth it just to know that you're doing everything right and you're using them properly. But there is a ton of tutorials out there on how to use all these things anyway. If you're sharing large files, again, what I use, if I'm sending, say, if I'm doing like a feasibility study, for a client, and there might be, there'll be images on there in terms of drawings, in terms of 3D rendered images of buildings, a lot of information there. You might have a file that might be like 20 megabytes in size. Some email servers can't, they won't accept it if the file size is too big. So normally we'd send them by WeTransfer, or if we're sending a video or sending a large file, we'd send it by WeTransfer. And WeTransfer is free. You can subscribe to it as well. You can get a paid version of it, but the free version is, I've always used a free version of it, and it works fine. So that basically is where you download your file to WeTransfer. You basically get a link created, and you send the link to the person. So when they click on the link, they can then go in and download that file. So it just allows you to transfer very large files very quickly as well. Okay, so again, we would use a lot with our designers, graphic designers, our videographers, and our architects. We would transfer through WeTransfer a lot. Just with some situations where you might be sending information, for example, in Kerry County Council or and some local development companies, they'll have firewalls built into their IT systems. So if you send a WeTransfer link, they won't be able to access. They won't be able to kind of open up external links on an email. So just check with the person you're sending to that they can actually receive WeTransfer file and WeTransfer link. Because I've sent files by WeTransfer before, and they weren't able to access them because they're stopped in terms of downloading and clicking on links within an email. So just check again that before you're sending stuff to anyone, ask, are they able to accept the WeTransfer link? If they are, then fantastic. If not, then you need to look at probably either sending a file or a link to an online or cloud-based file, or sending another way to them. But just check that out. But it is very, very simple way of transferring files, and it's free. So where I can, I'm going to show you this morning what's free or what's relatively inexpensive when it comes to getting technologies and downloading technology for your business or for your organization. Okay, so the next thing we're looking at is project management. Now, project management is, and we've done a couple of workshops on this previously, and I suppose the biggest issue with project management is actually, as I suppose in the title, is managing the project and managing time and managing actions and tracking time and tracking progress. So where a lot of groups I work with, where they're working on, let's say, fundraising projects, so they're looking at maybe 3 to 4 months fundraising drive, like the golf classic, it could be a raffle, it could be an event, and they're kind of working towards a kind of time frame to get the work done to the actual date of the fundraiser itself, and they're managing that. And sometimes it goes all over the place because they're not actually managing properly. They're having meetings, but they're not working to an action plan or to schedule or a timeline. There's very little delegation going on, so no one knows who's supposed to do what. And that's for a fundraising project. And then we work with a lot of groups on, say, building projects that are looking at renovating an existing building or building a brand new building. And they're working with a design team, they're working with a contractor, they're dealing with funders, they're dealing with stakeholders, they're dealing with planners, they're dealing with community, and all these things. And they're volunteers, and they're like, "Oh, geez, where do we even start and finish this thing? It's all over the place." So we would work with them in terms of developing a project management system that they would follow. Now, sometimes we would be involved in that, and we're actually managing the project for them. But more often than not, we're kind of gone by the time they're actually implementing the project. So our job would be to get them the funding. They get the funding, we're kind of out the gap then, and they're on their own working on the project. But we'd set them up with a kind of an action plan in terms of what they need to do. And it's very, very important that you follow, and keep it simple, a simple project management platform tool that you can use to actually monitor and manage the progress of the project over a period of time. So there's lots of project management software out there, and some are really, really good, very kind of feature rich. They do an awful lot. They have an awful lot going on. Just be careful, and this is, I suppose, something I would say with all technology, that if you're finding that you're spending an awful lot of time trying to figure out how to use the technology, that's not a good thing, because if you're spending all your time trying to figure something out, how to use something, rather than actually using it for what you're supposed to be using it for, that's just taking up time. So if you find that some of the software is complex and just bit too much detail in there for us to use, or we don't need all the functionality, just use a simple thing like Excel or even a Word document using tables to kind of help you manage a project. But there are some very good project management tools out there, and they're not that expensive to use. But because they're obviously they're fee based, the companies that are developing these things want to kind of make them kind of work really, really well. They want to add on all the kind of bells and whistles to kind of have them have their product better than the next good person's product. And what happened there is that sometimes the functionality is just way too more detailed than you need. You don't need half the amount of detail that the features that they have, and people get kind of lost in it, and it gets too complicated. So look, pick one that's relatively easy to use and not complex. So the ones that I've used in the past and currently use for some projects. Now, I normally stick with Excel when it comes to managing projects, and I'll talk you through that in a second. But the ones that the platforms there is thousands of project management apps out there. If you want any app store, there's just lots and lots of ones you can pick, and people are going, which one should I use? Some people go on and Google and say, okay, the best project management software, best project management platforms to use, and normally you get maybe top 10 that comes up, right? I'm just picking random ones here just to give you an idea of what's involved in them. So the one I've used and I kind of like, it's very feature rich, but it's a nice one to use, is Monday.com. And this is one again it's mostly for teams. So if you have teams working on projects, you can use it to schedule actions, delegate work to different people. People obviously can collaborate on it, so they can input their own input onto the platform as well. So if they've done something, they can say it's updated, it's completed. So it's a very good way for project managers to manage projects. And it's a very good collaboration tool. So a lot of these platforms are designed specifically for, like, say, software developers who use things like Monday, or Slack is another one that the software IT companies would use to manage projects. So if they're developing a new app or a new platform or website or whatever it might be, or new piece of software, and there might be a team of people collaborating on that, they'll use a project management tool to collaborate. So they're inputting in terms of what progress is being made on different elements of it. Again, in construction, a lot of construction companies would use these sort of apps as well to manage construction projects in terms of what's been completed, what needs to be done, timeframes, budgets, work completed, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 completion, that sort of stuff. So Monday's one I use, Monday.com. There is, in terms of pricing, like, there is always trial versions with these. Some of them have free versions that give you kind of very limited access, but limited access is probably okay for most organizations, because again, you don't need to have something that's going to do everything for you. Smartsheet is one that I use a lot, not so much as a project management tool, but it's got very good templates for things like Gantt charts for scheduling. So if we're doing a tender for a feasibility study, for example, normally we got to submit a time schedule or proposed time schedule to complete the work. So you normally have to provide a Gantt chart, which is basically a timeline in terms of what elements of the work will be done and when to be completed by. So when we're tendering, then the client that's seeking a tender will get an idea in terms of, okay, what's their time frame to start and finish this piece of work, and how they proposing to do this work over the period of maybe 3 months. So we'll use things like a Smartsheet to do up that template. So it's good. It's very good from that point of view. It's got very good templates. It's got very good checklist templates as well. So, and again, some of them are free. You can use a trial version of them as well. So I tend to use trial versions a lot and get what I need. Get what I need from the trial, and then you have it in pretty much to use afterwards. So you have the template, and you can use that template then going forward. So again, this is good again in terms of, as I said, it's like for workflows, for spreadsheet type scheduling. It's pretty good. Monday is very good from the point of view of the actual using as a management tool, and delegating work and looking at progress of projects as well. Some of these you might feel might be just over the top for what you need, and that's fine. You don't have to use these things. Just making you aware of what's out there. This is what I use. So this is a kind of a very quick kind of sample I just put together this morning for kind of a dummy project. So this is the screenshot. I'm just going to share the actual Excel sheet here with you just for a second. So Okay, can you see that there, the spreadsheet? So give me just thumbs up. Yeah. Okay, great. So this is kind of what I use. This is actually not a real one. This is only a sample one. Okay, for the purpose this morning. So what I'd normally do is, if I'm working on a project, if I'm starting a new project with a client, right? So if I'm say doing a feasibility study with a client on, let's say, a large building project. So there might be renovating an existing building into an enterprise center or something, right? What we'll normally do is we send on a Gantt chart like this. This is a Gantt chart with a schedule on it. And we'll use that as the tendering process. Okay, so that's kind of our first kind of project schedule that we will use to send to the client when we're tendering for a job. And then afterwards, when we actually get the contract, if we're lucky enough to get the contract, I then develop this project file. And the project file basically has everything relating to the project in one location. So I'm not kind of back and forth to a Word document, to an Excel document, to project management, to everything's on the one space. So you can see here in terms of the actual tabs down below. And again, these are still all color coded, nothing too fancy here. It's fairly basic, but that's all we need, something basic. So the project contacts, now I've not just filled in these details. So I put in the promoter's details, their name, their address, their email, their phone numbers, what role they have within an organization, in the organization I'm dealing with. So I might be dealing with, let's say, chairperson, coordinator, maybe an administrator, and there might be a lot more involved. Then in terms of our design team, so I put in the architect's name, if there might be one or two architects involved, an engineer, if there's an engineer involved, quantity surveyor if they're involved, I put in their details. If they're dealing with any kind of, like, say, accountants, their accountants or my accountants, any legal people involved, we put in those details there. And then any key stakeholders. So they might be dealing with, say, a leader application or a leader grant. So we put in the contact within leader, that we have their contact details as well. They might be dealing with, say, the MD officer within the local authority, we put in their details. They might be dealing with a planner, within their details. So anyone that's relating to the project, we'll put in their details here. So we're not back and forth scrolling through your phone to find out who's that person involved in that project. Now, the reason why I do this is because we could be dealing with maybe 4 or 5 live projects at any one time, and it can get very, very confusing if you're dealing with multiple numbers of people, different projects, different schedules, different locations, different funders, different local development companies, different local authorities. And if we're not recording these things properly, it'll just go all over the place. So we keep everything in the one location, okay? And I can access this anywhere. So if I'm away, I can access it on my phone if I need to get some information. So then with the project schedule. So again, the project schedule would be, like, say, phase 1 would be surveying a building, so preliminary meetings, who's the person that's going to be assigned to. So it's me, building surveys, the architect, the site assessment architect, consultation process, me, accommodation schedule, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we just go through the various phases. And then we can put in, now I haven't filled in these details here, we can put in when it's going to start, when it's going to finish, right? So we can then look at, so we might say start the preliminary meeting might happen next week. That's what happens. So the first week of the project kicks off, and then we'll work with the design team in terms of getting a schedule from them. And then we'll work through when everything needs to be done. And certain things have to be done before something else can start. So we use this to manage it, okay? Now, as we're going along, then we can actually put in more columns here in terms of, maybe obstacles or issues that have arisen with the project, maybe delay in planning, for example, a delay in a grant drawdown, whatever it might be. And normally we'll factor in here then as well client meetings. So we might put in maybe once a month as a client meeting, or once every 2 weeks a client meeting, and we'll factor that in here into the actual schedule as well. So we'll use this to manage our time and manage the schedule. Very important where you have a number of groups involved. Really, really important, because if you've got, say, an architect, engineer, a builder, you might then be doing the contract where you've got a builder, you've got block layer, you've got electrician, carpenter, plumber. It can get very, very out of control very, very quickly if it's not managed properly. So really important. And it's important for anyone, whether you're a private individual building a house, or whether you're a private business developing a project, or if you're a not-for-profit organization managing a building project or fundraising project or whatever project, that you do this. Because when it comes to not-for-profit organizations, where you're dealing with public funding or grant aid, you've got to look at your schedule in terms of how it's going to tie in with the drawdown of grants. Okay, so if you're not putting proper schedules, and let's say you're doing a phased payment system with a contractor, and you're not managing the time of this and managing it properly, you're going to run into problems when it comes to drawdown of grants that you're going to miss. You want to be late getting an application or a drawdown file in. There's a delay in getting the grant paid out. Then there's a delay in the next phase starting. So we can get very quickly out of control. So use very simple, again, Excel, because people are used to it. It's what I use. But again, if you want to use the project management tools, you can use that also. Just with the project management tools, if you can customize them, brilliant. If you can't, then they can be a bit problematic because you're kind of then working within the parameters of what you're allowed to do on the platform. The good thing about Excel is you can very easily just drop in, new columns here to make another column. You can put in, say, like, completion or something like that, so you can add in more and more and more into it. And you can also add in budgets as well in here as well. So it's project schedules. So again, all in the same file. Okay, so I'm not jumping between different files and spreadsheets. The project budget. So in this project, as an example, here's the initial cost analysis was done at the feasibility stage. Let's say if this project progresses into actually development stage, we will then use a project cash flow here, looking at in terms of what's actually being spent month per month on all of these. Okay, so this will then become a construction cash flow budget, but it's all in the one file. Okay, so we're not jumping back and forth between file to file. So if I'm working on a project, I just go into this one Excel file, and everything I need is on that. If we're dealing with grants, so there might be, say, a number of grants. So you might have, let's say, leader, you might have community support fund, you might have Hubble. Again, the source of the grants, how much was awarded, what element of the project this is going towards, has been drawn down in full or is it partially drawn down, and what's the balance. Okay, so let's say you have the amount awarded is, say, $5,000, and you've drawn down, let's say, 2.5, and you're left with a balance of 2.5, obviously. So what would you do there? So basically, if you're meeting with a client then, or if you're dealing with your committee and you're going back with a report saying, okay, the project's going really, really well, we've drawn down 2,500 of the grants for, let's say, fit out. We've been on to the builder. There's about another $3,000 left there to use in fit out. We've only got 2,500 of a grant left. That means we're going to be short 500 euros. What are we going to do about that? So it allows you to monitor and control the project as you're going along. Okay, so again, very, very simple to use. We've all used Excel at some level. So that's what I do. Then I put in, on the same place as well, is all the project files. So again, rather than me trying to look for files on my system to see, okay, where's that file that they gave me, I put all the files that are relating to that project in here as well. So I just have links to it. So it's linked back to the location of the file as well. Okay, so it becomes really handy if I'm meeting a client on Zoom or a team, and I'm like trying to go back and forth and between screens and all that. It can be time consuming. It can be kind of it's not very efficient. So by having everything in one location, it's very easy to work through the project as you're going along. So this works really, really well for fundraising projects, because again, you can say, okay, what do we need to do for the fundraiser? We need to get tickets printed or cards printed. Who's going to be doing that? We'll assign that to Tom. We need to book a venue. We'll assign that to Caroline. We need to go and talk to some sponsors. We might have 10 people within the committee who's going to talk to 10 different sponsors. And when that's done by, then we go have a follow-up meeting maybe in a week's time. Right, Tom, did you get the cards printed? Yes, I did. That's that completed. So you can manage it. Okay. But the great thing about this, you can go back then afterwards, and you can look at how well do we do the project? Where was there hiccups? Where was there delays? How can we do better next time around? Okay. So when I'm looking at my projects, we use something like this to say, okay, next time around, could we improve and speed up these projects a bit faster? If we're dealing with a design team and we found that there's a lot of delays with the work they're doing within this, that will then, lead us to look at maybe using a different design team next time around, or questioning and saying, look, we worked with you before. What happened at the end was fantastic, but it just took too long to get it completed. We need to address that going forward. So we can use that then, this kind of a scheduling to say, look, there was areas here where there was lots of delays, where with issues, but there's no reason given to us, and you're evaluating the project. So again, when myself and Caroline sit down and Aim sit down at the end of this program in 2 or 3 weeks' time, we'll be looking at the training links program since last November. What worked well, what didn't work well, scheduling wise, time wise, content wise, what was the feedback like, and we use that then to plan going forward. Okay, so it's about keeping everything kind of in one space. So go back to the slide. Let's try this again. Okay, so as I said, you can use the likes of these, which are really, really good, but sometimes they mightn't be as customizable to your project, or they might be just way too feature rich for you to use, or they feel that you're not getting any benefit from it, and there's no point spending money on using them. And then just using, as I said, something like simply as Excel to keep everything in one space. Again, with Excel and with these, obviously you can give people access to this, so you send them on. So if you're a team, they'll all have access to this platform. They'll have all of the login. They all can collaborate on it. The issue with using some of the platforms is that if some of your team don't know how to use it, then that's a problem, because now they got to be trained up on how to use the same platform you're using, so they can use it. So, for example, we're involved in a couple of different networks in the other company I'm involved with, and they're all using Slack. And I hate Slack because it's just, it's just people just bombard stuff, put up stuff there for the sake of it, and put up comments and put up notes and put up questions on there, and you can just get lots of emails coming in or lots of notifications saying Mary has put up a notification on Slack, and you got to go back in and you got to read it and things like that. So again, you need to make sure that your other team members are used to using the same software that you're using with them. That's why Excel, people are familiar with it, works well. So again, you can give people also access to this. If it's on a shared file, like the OneDrive I mentioned earlier on, people have access to it. They can actually go in and they can edit it, and they've control over it as well. So again, it's about making your projects more efficient, more effective, making sure that you're getting things done. It's also creating that paper trail I mentioned earlier on in terms of helping you evaluate what went well, what didn't go well. And this means you get more stuff done, faster and more efficiently. So some people are using then digital planners. Now, I don't know if you are, you might be. I use a digital planner, but to be honest, this is what I use. It's a good old-fashioned diary planner with a task to do each day, a to-do list on it, important calls to make, important emails to make. So this one I got on Amazon, and it's good because I like writing stuff down, because writing stuff down, it makes you think. Plus, I do a lot of I get a lot of calls coming in, nearly every day about looking at different projects, different things. And I use it to kind of come up with different ideas. So I just kind of doodle on it and kind of write some notes on it as well, just some writing things down. So I use Google Calendar as my main diary for scheduling my work each day, my meetings and everything else. And I use the old-fashioned diary then to look at kind of my to-do list for the next day, and important calls, emails, phone numbers, that kind of stuff, people I need to ring, whatever it might be. I use all of these ones. These are just 4. There's lots of them out there, digital planners like Friday, there's Asana, there's Trello, there's Todoist. Okay, so Todoist is one I've used, and it's literally just a to-do list. That's what it is. But you can put links there. So the good thing about these is you can put links to, say, a Zoom call, or links to a Teams meeting, or links to a file or something, right? So again, it just kind of digitally allows you to contract your day. So if you're working on multiple projects, or if you're a coordinator or you're a volunteer working in an organization and you have lots going on, so you're trying to manage, like, say, multitask within an organization. And I know many coordinators in not-for-profit organizations who are jacks of all trades and Jills of all trades, because they just are doing everything. And it can go all over the place very, very quickly. So, and a lot of organizations, as you know better than I do, you're dealing with multiple funders, multiple projects, volunteers, staff, funders, your clients, your community. There's a lot going on there. So by just having some sort of checklist of what needs to be done each day will help you manage your time better. These are kind of digital planners that help you do that. So again, it's about looking at, the day before, okay, what do we do tomorrow? What's on the schedule? What are the kind of priority areas? What's been completed? What's not been completed? The reason why these work well is that it allows you as well to kind of track your time. So we worked with a couple of coordinators over the last number of years, for the last 20 years really, but over the last number of years, in terms of they're going back to their boards and saying, look, this is our workload here. It's bananas. We need help. We need support with it. We're putting all these extra hours in. we do for volunteers. So if a volunteer is volunteering, they'll do something like this to kind of to actually record their what they're actually doing. And the good thing about these is that you can download, you can print off like charts in terms of like, progress, projects completed, kind of like how productive you are each week. And it's a very good way of kind of visually showing your board, or if you're a volunteer, visually showing the actual amount of work you're doing and tasks you're doing each week, every day, every week. Like, so when I look at my Google Calendar and it's like, everything's shaded in terms of meetings, training, whatever it might be, I color code them based on whether it be training, whether it be client meeting, whether it be a mentor meeting, whether it be a project meeting. So very visually, I can look at a month on my calendar, and it will show me, how busy I am in certain areas. So if it's lots of, let's say, red might be training, there's lots of red boxes can be there. It means like there's a lot of training on that month, but you can see how productive you've been through that month as well. But using something like this can, it helps you again go get through your tasks quicker because you're ticking things off as you're doing it, okay? And you're prioritizing tasks as well. Again, some people just like the old-fashioned diary and write stuff down, but again, this gives you a bit more functionality in terms of planning your day and planning your schedules. Okay, these are also very good too if you're working with teams, if you're planning if you're working, say, with a team of volunteers. So I know one or two Thai towns group who use this for managing their volunteers, say when they're doing weekly cleanups, that they'll assign people to different areas, and they'll just check them off. So they'll organize their cleanup teams using a simple planner like this. That also allows them to monitor who's doing what, who's turning up every week, who's not turning up every week, and what's being completed. Okay, again, scheduling, somebody might use a normal diary, others might be using Google Calendar or Outlook. Again, if you are using a digital calendar like Google Calendar or Outlook, make sure it is synced to all your devices. There's nothing worse, and I sometimes it has happened to me when I change phone, for example. I forget to set up properly, and I might put something to my calendar on my laptop, and maybe meeting with a client, and it's not synced to my phone, and then I'm out meeting another client and we schedule in another meeting, and I've double booked it because it's on my phone separately from my calendar on my laptop. So again, Google Calendar is good from a scheduling point of view, from a diary management point of view, and you can also put your to-do list and tasks on that also. If you're using, say, Zoom, and you're scheduling a Zoom meeting, it will automatically be stored in your calendar anyway. So it'll be marked in your calendar, and the link to your Zoom meeting will be there as well. So it's good way just kind of controlling your diary. And again, most of you might be using these already, and that's fine. It's just if you aren't, it's something to look at. And if you don't want to use them, that's fine. A good old-fashioned diary in Easton's will do the job as well. Okay, so the next one then is bookkeeping and finance, and this is an important one because, again, a lot of small businesses that I work with would have, some sort of online bookkeeping software that they're doing their invoices on, they're doing their record keeping on, they're keeping receipts, they're keeping their bank statements, they're doing their reconciliations on it. But there's not that many not-for-profit organizations using it. They're using, good old-fashioned pen and paper, and they're just basically recording their income and expenditure on a journal. And they might meet maybe once a week or once a month, and the treasurer is keeping tabs on what's coming in, what's going out. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. That's fine. Nothing wrong with it. However, when you're dealing with multiple funders, multiple sources of funding coming in, multiple revenue sources coming in, lots of money going out, you need to keep in top of money in, money out. Now, some of your organizations will have administrators, or you have finance people that are paid either part-time, full-time, or coordinators might be responsible for doing the finances as well. So you might be using software packages like this, but if you're not, it's something certainly to look at. There's two things, I suppose, that I would say is, one is if you've got a company, limit my guarantee, you're going to have a company accountant that's going to be doing your annual returns for you. So have a chat with them and say, okay, well, what system, we're thinking about getting a software package, an online bookkeeping software. What one would they recommend? Normally they will recommend the platform that they're using. So if they're using, say, Big Red Books or Sage or one of those, they'll say, look, use that because that's what we're using. And if you're inputting all your invoices and receipts on on that within your office, we can just access those files very, very easily, and we don't have to re-input them into our system because we're using the same system. Sometimes the ones that the accountants are using are complex. They're a bit more difficult to use. They require a bit more training, a bit more understanding of what's going on. So people don't like using them because they're just too difficult to use. So they'll outsource maybe to bookkeeper to do the books for them in terms of their weekly income and expenditure. That can be costly. So what I've used the different number of ones. I'll go through the ones I've used in a second now, but again, talk to your accountants first, because no point you spending money or spending time using a software package that they're like going, well, that's fantastic, you've got lovely reports and that, but we have to go give us all your invoice receipts and we'll just put them all into our system to do the annual return for you. So sometimes it's good to use one that they're using. The ones that I've used, so the first one up there is called Wave, and the reason I put Wave up first because it's free, okay, and I like things that are free. And Wave is very, very user friendly. It's it's fairly self-explanatory in terms of like your dashboard here. You've got your sales, so you put in, if you're invoicing for whatever it might be, you put that in there. If you've got, say, purchases, so you've got money going out for bills, you put in all your information there in terms of your, and it allows you to break them down into, say, utility bills, broadband, insurance, marketing, rent, whatever your bills are, staffing costs. Now, some of these reporting payroll functions, if you might be using a separate package for payroll, that's fine. You might have any staff, so you don't use payroll. So you don't need to use all these tools, right? So you only use what you need to use. So most of these platforms, they can do pretty much everything besides drive the car for you, right? They're amazing, some of them, right? They've got lots of functionality. To be honest, you probably need about 10% of the functionality that they have. That is all used. I've used all of these at some stage. I said I've used probably about maybe 5 to 10% of what they actually can do. I just use them for invoicing. I use them for monitoring money going out, money coming in. I don't use them for anything else. I don't have any stats. I don't have payroll. The only reports I print off will be cash flow reports or debtors reports every now and again. But I don't use half the stuff you can use, okay? Because I don't need to. So the Wave one it was very, very good because it allows you to input all your money in, money out. And again, of course, like everything else, if you're not inputting anything to us, it's of no use to you. It's only useful if you're actually using it. So we would kind of recommend that, like, at least once a week, that you update you put in your bills for that week or that month into the system, and you kind of categorize it based on what the platform allows you to do in terms of categorizing different headings. If you've got money coming in terms of revenue, it might be fundraising, it might be fees, it might be grants, whatever. Again, use that. You input that information onto Wave as well. And this is where the software is important for you, is that when it comes to reports, and you click on reports, it allows you to print off your profit and loss account, and you can set dates. So you can say, okay, for the last 6 months, for the last 12 months, for the last 2 years, your profit and loss account, your cash flow for that period of time as well. So if you're asked to, let's say, present a set of accounts for a grant application, normally your accounts would be, let's say it's 2022, so you might have 2021 accounts done with your accountant, okay? You might have, or you mightn't have had. You might, the last set of accounts might have been 2020, but they want to know what happened last year. So you need to show a set of management accounts for 2021. A lot of groups can't show that because they haven't been, recording the money in, money out, okay? They might have a simple treasurer's report, but doesn't go into much detail. Using something like this, if you're inputting it every week, it's just literally a click of a mouse, and you can print off that report on the date, based on the dates that you're looking for. Okay, so it's very, very useful from that point of view. Where Wave isn't useful is if you're doing, say, things like, say, VAT returns, if you're VAT registered, or if you're doing, say, payroll. Wave is an American platform, so it's not connected to ROS, to Revenue Online Services here. So and it's not designed for the Irish tax system. Okay, now if you're using it purely for reporting purposes and for managing money in, money out, it's perfectly fine. It's the best one out there for you because it's free. But if you want it to be linked to Revenue Online Services to do tax returns, VAT returns, payroll returns, your P30 returns, it's no good to you because it's not linked. So the ones we've used then, so we started off using Wave just purely as an invoicing tool, really. Then we moved on to Bullet. Now, Bullet HQ is an Irish-owned company. The good thing about Bullet is that it's linked to Ross, so you can actually do your returns to revenue through the platform. Okay, it's designed for. Plus, you can add your bank accounts to it as well. So it's very much designed for the Irish tax system and banking system. So again, if you've got a larger organization with that's dealing with multiple lots of money, you're doing returns, that you may be registered for that, or you are doing payroll returns. Bullet HQ is one to look at. The costs they're all roughly around the same anyway. So it's €28 a month for this one. The one I'm currently using is Surf. Now, I was using Bullet up till 2 years ago, and then I moved over to Surf. And the reason I moved to Surf was because my accountants that I deal with, they moved on to Surf. So, which means that if I'm using the same accounts package they're using, I don't have to send on all the stuff to them. I can just give them access to my Surf, and they can access all my data directly. So it saves them time. Time with them is money, so it saves me money. So they're not going back re-inputting everything in again. So Surf accounts is Irish as well. Also linked to Ross, the Revenue Online Services. Also linked to your bank accounts as well. And again, it's got a lot more functionalities that I use. And this is the price that I'm on, which is $19.95 per month. Okay. So it's pricey enough. To be honest, if you're only using it for purely reporting purposes, I'd be recommending go with Wave because it's free. But if you are going to be using it for more than just that, and you have a company, look at one of the paid packages. Then you Sort My Books, which is the good thing about Sort My Books is Kerry. They're based in Killarney, and they offer pretty much what Surf do and Bullet do. They all offer pretty much the same thing in terms of the functionality, in terms of design, in terms of the way it works, and the pricing is a bit higher because they offer more. There's more kind of add-ons and added value with their one. So there's the four. There's a lot more. There's Big Red Book. There's Sage. There's QuickBooks. There is Xero. There's tons of them out there. Look at the ones that are easy to use, because that's where you want something that's not going to take you a month to figure out how to use, and they're complicated because complicated isn't good. Talk to your accountant about what they would recommend as well if you are going on this road. And you might already be using software as well, but the main thing from the community voluntary organizations, and most don't do it for some reason, is that it gives you very quick access to reports. So, when you're trying to put a report together for board meeting, for your monthly board meetings, if you're doing a financial report, using some of this is just literally, it's just, very, very nicely presented reports at a click of a mouse. So there's no kind of typing up reports every month for financial reports. Then you have online payment processors. Now you might be selling anything online, but you might want to do, if you've been on the online fundraising workshop we did there a number of weeks ago, we talked about setting up an online donation button on your website. So your three main online payment processors that pretty much everyone uses would be Stripe, Square, or PayPal. So again, you're probably familiar with Stripe and PayPal more so. And again, it's up to you really which one you want to use. Their pricing structures that you can see from this table can be fairly complex, and fairly complicated to figure out what's going to cost me, in terms of transaction fees. I suppose the one I've used, the one I use for kind of my own personal stuff would be PayPal. If I'm buying stuff online, it'd be PayPal I use. But then for our booking system for HQ, for the offices, we use Stripe, and then they take a processing fee then every time someone books an office or books a hot desk. The only thing with these is that when you're looking at an online payment function on your website for, let's say, a fundraiser, so someone can donate money, there's two key things here. One is that the customer needs to be familiar with and trust the options. So some people will have a number of options, either pay by credit card, pay by, let's say, electronic transfer through their bank, pay via PayPal, or via Stripe. So it gives people options. Okay, so the person has to trust you and trust your site. The website itself, if you're using your own website with an online donation button, that website has to be secure. So talk to a web designer about making sure the website's secure. Normally there's a lock key up in the URL address bar, and that lock key shows that the website is secure. If that lock key is not there, it means the website's not secure, and no one's going to trust giving their credit card details or giving their details to the site. But it is something that most organizations don't even think about, because they're like, we're not selling it. We don't have an e-commerce site. We're not selling anything online. It's to allow you to donate and allow people to donate money directly to your site, that they're not going through third-party sites like GoFundMe, they're donating directly on your website. Plus, a lot of organizations as well, are using, charity shops is a big way of a lot of organizations that they're generating revenue to subsidize their activities. Very few are looking at online shops, and something again that we're addressing with a few of our clients that, if you're talking about a charity shop, you've got a physical shop, you've got a staff, you've got everything else. Why not look at setting up an e-commerce platform and an online shop where you can sell stuff online? There's one group that we're working with at the moment, and they have an online shop where you can, at Christmas time they were selling calendars for like, it was €10, whatever it was. They sell if they're doing a fundraiser, they sell their cards online. So like say, buy a ticket for a raffle or whatever, they'll sell it online. And they can sell merchandise. You can sell pretty standard anything you want really on there. But look at that as well as something that you might want to do in terms of online payments. So even if you're say hosting a Zoom seminar, webinar, and you were inviting guest speakers, right, and you kind of maybe set that up and rather than do it in the hotel, you do it online, and you might have like a booking fee through like Eventbrite, or booking fee directly on your website. For let's say €5 a head or something, just to generate some money for the actual project. So there's no reason why a not-for-profit organization can't go down the e-commerce route. If you are your web designer, if you are using a web designer, and you should be if you're looking at e-commerce, they will advise on what platform to use, and they'll set these things up for you. So it's getting an understanding in terms of how you can use these to actually generate revenue for your project. Because a lot of people are fundraising the old-fashioned way, physically. They're collecting money. Use your website, your online platform as a way of generating revenue as well. If you're doing things like, say, some groups are doing things like community cafes, community shops, markets, trade events, fundraising events where they might be doing like say a festival of the weekend, or they might be doing like say barbecue or something like that. One way of collecting money is by using, again, through credit cards. So a lot of small businesses will use SumUp as a credit card platform or facility. So if someone doesn't have cash and say, look, I'd love to be able to donate money, but I don't have any cash on me, they can donate via their credit card. So SumUp is a very, very quick way to get into this in terms of getting the actual card readers a lot of groups, a lot of say businesses we work with that use SumUp would be, let's say, people that go to farmers markets or country markets. So they will stand with a table. And again, now because they have SumUp and the card reader, they can actually take credit card. We've seen as well for maybe some small theatre groups, they use it for credit card payments as well. So again, a lot of these are designed for businesses, but in my mind, if you're a community volunteer organization is generating revenue through selling products or services or looking for donations, your business as well. So there's no reason why you can't use it. Okay, so some of the financial kind of platforms that are there to look at to see how we can use them in our organization. You might you don't have to use, you might use SumUp, you might use Stripe or any of these. Certainly look at the online bookkeeping though as something from a reporting point of view that you should be doing. Okay, so the next one then is digital marketing, and like this is, as I say, endless in terms of how far you can go with it. I suppose there'd be one thing I would say to you when it comes to social media for not-for-profit organizations. It is an area that some not-for-profits are very good at. They use it, and they use it very effectively. And then there's many, many more that just have like maybe Facebook page, and that's their only online platform. But they don't use it properly, or they don't use it to its full potential, or they don't manage it and control it. So there's a couple things I would say to you. If you're looking at digital marketing from the point of view of communicating with your clients that you're providing services for, your community that you're working on behalf of, or your stakeholders or your funders, they're the groups you're communicating with. What's the best way to communicate with them? Okay, so if your client base aren't on social media, then social media isn't the way to go. If your funders aren't, going to be, looking up your social media platforms to get more information about you, then it's not really important. However, you need to have some sort of online presence, especially when it comes to the funding side of things, because your funding, your funders, whether it be local authority, government department, public, philanthropist, whoever it might be, they want to do some background checks on you. They want to see what you're about, what do you do, how well you do it. And the only way they're going to find that is based by, they're going to Google you. They're going to go online, say, there's a website, they don't have any website, can't find them on social media. This organization doesn't exist online. I don't know anything about them. I can't find out anything about them. Whereas they can go on and you've got a website, and it's got details of your organization, what you do, how good you do, what work you do. They can see more and more about what you're at. If you're on social media and you're getting good exposure and it's all positive and a lot of good feedback and you're showing you're doing plenty of good work, that's going to benefit you as well. Just be careful though that if you are using social media, that you control it, because that can get very negative very, very quickly. And you can get a lot of bad negative publicity and PR through social media if you're not managing and controlling it. Okay, so if you're deciding to enter into the horrible world of social media, you've got to have someone that is responsible managing it regularly, because if that's your communication platform to communicate with people, you've got to be there to respond to any issues that come up on it. Okay, very, very important. Okay, we talk about risk management in the not-for-profit sector. Reputation risk is probably one of the biggest ones, where there's doing damage done to your reputation, because there's always someone out there that is going to, no matter how good you do or how well you do, there's always going to be someone out there that's going to be trying to knock you, or going to be, going to just basically be negative against you, and will spread stuff that's not true or might be true about you, about your organization. You've got to control it, okay? So you have to very detailed policies and procedures around social media access, use as well, who can post, who can't post, who can respond, who can't respond, and what do we put up and what don't we put up, okay? So the social media platforms that will be most relevant to your target group is the ones you should be looking at. Now, there's lots of social media platforms out there, as you're aware. And some of you will be using social media privately the whole time anyway, and you'll be well aware of what it does and what it can't do, and you'll be used to navigating your way around it. Others mightn't have a clue. I'm not a social media person at all. I use LinkedIn as my primary social media platform. I don't use it to get much business. I don't use it as a marketing tool at all. It's just there to have a presence online. I don't use Instagram. I don't use Facebook. I don't use YouTube. I certainly don't use TikTok. So because it's not relevant to my client base. My client base is Kerry County Council, North East West Kerry Development, South Kerry Development Partnership, Western Resources. They're not going to be, checking me out on social media to see should they be hiring me for contracts or asking me to tender for contracts. Okay, so it's not relevant to my business. If it was relevant to my business, we would be on it. So in HQ, we're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. I don't manage it. My business partner does, thankfully, but because we're out there trying to target everyone, so we're using it because we need to be out there using it. So it's only what's relevant to you. Okay, Instagram works well because it's very image based. You can put up a lot of information there in terms of, and again, when we're talking about say promoting your organization from a marketing point of view, you're trying to promote the good things that you do, right? So the projects that you're running. So for example, if you're a family resource center, what you're doing within your community, the work you're doing within your community, the support you're providing. So you can provide up information there on Instagram in terms of information that you're giving out to your community, in terms of information that they should be aware of. So it might be kind of, are you aware of the following? Are you aware of this? Click here for further information about, your entitlements or whatever it might be. And you're putting that out there, message out there through social media. So you're informing people through social media. And because you're the person that's informed, or the group that's informing them, they're going to go to you then for further support or information, right? So we work with a lot of groups that do that. They might be a family resource center or a disability organization or a local development company, and they'll use social media to basically promote information and get information out there, right? So during COVID, a lot of organizations were doing this, where they were saying, look, these are the protocols and things you need to follow now, and they put up that information on social media, and then they might have linked into further information, or they might have call to action, please contact us if you need more help, or we're going to have a seminar or a webinar on Wednesday week about this, and use social media to promote that. LinkedIn, a lot of community voluntary organizations don't use LinkedIn because they feel they don't need to, because they're not corporates, they're not companies, they're networking with other companies. If you're going after sponsors, okay, corporate sponsors, they're on LinkedIn. So therefore you should be on LinkedIn as well. So use LinkedIn as a way of networking with the corporate sector to look at identifying potential partners and sponsors to partner with. Okay, so get your information about the work you're doing out on LinkedIn. If it's a fundraiser for a specific project, if you're trying to raise money, if you're trying to do something really good within your community, put up there on LinkedIn. Use LinkedIn then to build up your network in terms of your contacts within those organizations, to tap them for a contact, potentially get in the door, to get a pitch, to get sponsorship. So when we're looking at, say, working with a group that's looking at sponsorship, we'll ask them, okay, what is the company locally that's the biggest company locally in your parish, in your town, in your community, and they give me the company name. We would then look for people's contacts on LinkedIn. Are they linked with anyone that's working with that company? Like, say, the first person or second or third, or whatever it might be, contact. We then might find that, oh, geez, actually know 4 people working at a company, and 3 of them are actually first contacts. So use your local contacts then to get in the door and get talking to them. So that's why LinkedIn is really important from a sponsorship point of view. Not so much necessarily communicating with your community or your stakeholders or your clients, but certainly in terms of targeting sponsors. Facebook, again, we're all familiar with it. Again, a lot of organizations are only using Facebook as their only online presence. That's not good, because it's kind of going down the charts in terms of the more popular one. Again, because we're so used to, we use it a lot, or a lot of groups use it a lot. I suppose one thing about Facebook is that you can fundraise directly on your Facebook page, which is good. And it's a good way of getting, again, content up there, information up there for your client base. YouTube is the one that I would be suggesting you concentrate on a lot, or certainly videos. We're getting in an age where, we're in an age where people, their attention span is very, very short. So if you're trying to explain what your project is about, what work you do, how good you do it, in a kind of a report format or in a kind of a proposal, it's kind of boring, and it will be kind of boring. Reading a project proposal from a group, telling them about what they're doing, what they're not doing, and where they're doing it, and why they're doing it, and the needs analysis and all that kind of stuff. You can be a bit tedious reading all those, especially if you're like assessing maybe hundreds of them. So do a video presentation about your project. Like maybe 1 minute video in terms of, hi, this is what we do, this is why we do it, this is who we do it for, this is what we achieved in the past, and get it across. If you're doing a video and you got a client base, get the client base involved in the video, right? So we've worked with a number of disability organizations over the years, and what they are very good at doing is getting the participants that are on their courses, their training programs, that are involved in the projects, getting them doing the talking, right? So you have, let's say, a young adult with, say, an intellectual disability coming on talking about what this project has made, how it's made a difference to their lives and their friends' lives, and what it's done for them, rather than, say, the chairperson coming on saying, hi, how are you, this is what we do, and it's very formal. Have it the service users using it. We used to do evaluations for road transport companies over the years, and we get them to do videos of the people on the bus singing, chatting, talking, showing the impact of this on their lives, rather than like Excel spreadsheets with a number of passengers and all this kind of stuff, which kind of is information they require, but it's kind of boring. You don't get the message across. You want to show how this made a difference to people's lives. We show videos of, let's say, if we're working on facility projects, we'll get an architect to draw up a kind of a 3D overview of the project when it's going to be completed, and we put that up in video. So we link it to their social media pages, so then people can see what the project will look like when it's completed. So you're kind of saying to them, help us build this, and they click on the link and it shows a video of what the project will look like. That's way more effective and way more impactful than just a proposal about, we're going to have a football pitch, or we're going to have a dressing room, we're going to have fencing and a path around it. People can try to maybe visualize in their head, but some people can't. You need to show them what it's going to look like. So YouTube works really well from the platform point of view for that. You can also use Vimeo, which is the other platform as well. But start looking at doing video as a way of promoting your projects. Really, really important thing to be doing, and it's got a lot more impact. If you look at all the ads on TV for your Concern, Goal, Red Cross, all these ads, they're very impactful in terms of they're very emotive, and they kind of pull on your heartstrings in terms of seeing the suffering and desperation people have. That's just in words. People say, sure, they don't see it, so they don't recognize it. Whereas if you show it in front of the reality, what people are going through on an ad, which they do, that's got way more impact. Okay, so you do something similar for your organizations in terms of showing people what you're actually about, what you do. You don't need to go out and hire a videographer to do it. You can do a video on your mobile phone. Okay, if it's very slick and very high production quality, and if I'm a sponsor, I'm thinking, okay, why do they spend so much money on doing the bloody video? They could have spent that money on doing the project they're supposed to be doing. So do it, like, don't do it really a brutal version of it where it's terrible. But, you know, you can use your mobile phone to make a video very, very, very easily, very simply, very little cost involved, using, you know, small bit of technology, you know, small bit of equipment. If you can get a videographer to do it for free for you as a kind of a bit of a, as a contribution or as on a voluntary basis, absolutely fantastic. Talk to the colleges as well, to MTU, to ETB, any of those, anyone that's doing, say, media studies. They're always looking for projects for their students to work on, and they might do it for free as well. If it's non-commercial, if there's a non-commercial video, they should be able to do that for you. And again, they'll have all the equipment and everything else, and the cameras and all that. But, you know, good old-fashioned mobile phone with a camera on it, do fine as well. Hootsuite is a social media platform, then a management platform, where if you're using social media a lot, some people would be. Again, not many not-for-profit organizations are using it enough to justify this, but a lot of small businesses are, and a lot of established large businesses are. Where you're trying to manage a number of different social media platforms, using Hootsuite as one example, is where you can actually manage multiple accounts. So you can schedule posts. If you want stuff to go out every week at a certain same time, if you want to manage your content across platforms, you can use things like Hootsuite. As I said, I just put it there because it's there. I don't see many not-for-profit organizations use it. What I would say, just to wrap up on the social media side of things, is that there is lots of courses out there on using digital marketing. They're always directed towards businesses, or people working in the not-for-profit sector feel that there's no point in me going on there because it's all about business. Doesn't matter if it's for business or if it's for a not-for-profit business. It's the same platform. It's the same way you use it. It's the same objective. So pick those courses and go on them. They come up throughout the year, and they're normally delivered online as well. So pick a few of them. There's a ton of tutorials out there on how to use these platforms and use them properly. If you are looking at a social media as a way forward, say maybe like a fundraising project, identify someone locally that might be doing marketing or digital marketing or social media. Ask them to advise you on putting a plan together, or a strategy together, and an action plan for your social media posts. So you're just doing it right, okay? And as well, if you are looking at using it more and more, or using it at all, sorry, make sure that you've got good policies and procedures in terms of how to use social media. There's some very good templates online, and some very good information about, you know, protecting yourself on social media and protecting your organization. Really important for organizations like clubs that are working with kids, or family resource centers, or organizations that are working with young people or vulnerable people, that you have very, very strict social media policies within your organization. Okay. Google for nonprofits. And so Google, you might be familiar with, say, Google Workspace. So Google Workspace is where you have Google Forms, Google Docs, Google Spreadsheets, Google Calendar, Gmail, Google Meet, right? So you have all these basically apps that Google have under their platform. They do have discounts, and they have, you know, free versions for nonprofits. So I just put the link there beyond the slides. We've seen it out anyway, to go into that, to look at, you know, what you can get for your organization for free of them, or the discounted version of it. Okay, so there's some there in terms of, they have, like, say if you go to Ireland, it'll have the criteria you have to comply with to be eligible. It's not that complex or it's not that difficult to be eligible, but you need to make sure you're ticking some of the boxes. And there's some things, so Google Workspace, Google Ad Grants, YouTube nonprofit program, Google Earth platform, and then Google Store discounts. So again, it's just, you know, some free stuff that Google have for not-for-profit organizations. And some people use Google the whole time for all their applications as well. I don't. I use Microsoft applications, but I use Google for some stuff. Email marketing, then again, a lot of organizations think this is only for businesses. We don't have any clients, therefore why are we doing email marketing? Email marketing is, you know, you're all probably sending out flyers and notifications, using newsletters, all these things, right? Look at doing it through email if you can. So the key thing with email marketing is that you have a database of email contacts. So without emails, you don't have email marketing. So you need to have people's emails. So what we would do as a consultant, if we're doing, say, a training course, what we'll ask is people to put in their, if they're signing up if they're signing in on the day, or if they're registering before the event or before the training, we'll ask them for their email address, okay? And we'll ask them for their email address so we can correspond with them and communicate with them. So we will send them out information like the slideshow, we send them out information like links, templates, etc. Okay, and we get the permission then to send them information. We'll also have on that email, the first initial email, if they want to opt out of getting any emails from us, they can tick the box and we don't email them anymore. We take them off our email database. Okay, if you're a not-for-profit organization and you're dealing with groups in your community or people within your community, and you want to contact them and keep in contact with them, engage with them, and you want to do that through email, you need to get their email address off them. So again, having, say, maybe a sign-up form on your website. So that might be like, click here or sign up here for a monthly newsletter. They sign up, they give your email address, now you have it, okay? You might have a sign-up sheet at an event. So if you're back to doing physical events again, or a sign up on a Zoom call, again, you're asking them for their email address, okay? And then if you're looking at, say, using social media, you can drive your sign-ups through social media as well. So you're getting people to sign up to get more information from you. So you might, again, give, like, say, on Instagram, five main tips that they should be following. And then say, like, for detailed information on this, we'll send you an ebook with all the information on it via email, and they give your email address. The key thing with email lists is that you have to be compliant with GDPR. So in terms of data protection, and you have to give people the option of opting out of that email list, okay? So you can't bombard people with emails every day about stuff if they don't want to be bombarded every day about stuff, okay? So you got to give them the option to sign up for it, and the option to be asked to be removed from the email list or the subscription list, okay? So if you are using email marketing, which is a very good way of communicating and getting your message out there, especially, say, if you're using newsletters or digital newsletters, it goes out automatically to all your group once a month if it's a once a month newsletter. So you can do this on Outlook and do it manually quite easily. It's not a big deal. You can do it through Gmail manually. It's not a big deal either. But if you want to kind of do it more professionally and have it kind of, look more professional, have it more kind of streamlined, have it more managed properly. There's three that I've used. I've used Mailchimp, I've used Constant Contact, I've used HubSpot, but there are three kind of main platforms out there. Mailchimp is one that we would use. Now, we don't use it a lot because, again, I don't have hundreds of clients, so then I'm contacting every regularly. So I don't use it personally, but a lot of my clients that I have on the business side use it a lot. And a lot of the community voluntary organizations I've worked with use it a lot as well for newsletters. So you've got the good thing about Mailchimp and all these that you have templates. You can design your landing page. So when you get you often see it there. If you get, say, if you're subscribed to an email list for a hotel, for example, you're going to get offers and special offers and Easter break packages and that kind of stuff sent to you regularly via email. And you'll see that they're kind of like a landing page with, like, maybe the hotel image on it, some graphics on it. They're like designed well. Mailchimp allows you to design those landing pages and templates, okay? It's free. So also in terms of, it's got some very, very good tutorials in terms of what you should put in terms of content, in terms of, scheduling, in terms of, how to use it more effectively as well. Now, again, a lot of you won't need half the functionality or even a fraction of the functionality that's there. But again, it's a way of you having been looking more professional and doing it more professionally in terms of using email to contact and keep in contact with your community, with your client base. So primarily we will see it with newsletters, is where groups are sending out a newsletter once a month or information once a month to their groups. Or if they're doing, let's say a fundraising drive or a fundraiser, they'll send out the information via email to the person's email, okay? Or if they're, if they've got, say, maybe training courses regularly they're running from their center, they're doing things like summer camps or Easter camps or just regular events, whatever it might be. If they got meeting room for hire or AstroTurf pitches for hire, they'll use this in terms of informing people that it's available for rent, and they might do that by email each week. Using Mailchimp just speeds up the whole process for you. Surveys then, again, we use surveys a lot if we're surveying communities for, say, community plans, town plans, village plans. If we're doing, say, evaluations with companies or organizations, we'll survey their client base, we'll survey their staff, we'll survey their volunteers. So if you're doing a lot of surveys, so if we're doing, say, a village or maybe a parish plan, we might be sending surveys out to 500 people in the community, right? So if we're doing that manually with a physical survey, paper-based survey, we'd have to have it sent out by post or a collection point. We'd have to get the information back, collate it, get someone to analyze it, and analyze each survey respondents, put all the responses into some sort of format like graphs, charts, all that kind of thing, right? Very, 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 very time consuming. Can get expensive, but it's time consuming and it's boring as anything. So the key thing really is how you speed up this process and how you get it done quickly. So we use SurveyMonkey. I use SurveyMonkey in my business for all the surveys we do. And I use it because it's user friendly. It's got some very good templates. It's got very good design in terms of question design, and it's got some very good and analytical applications as well. So if I get back, let's say 200 responses from a community survey, it's automatically analyzed, and it goes, I can print it off as charts, I can print it off as PDFs, I can share the data, share the findings. I might have opened in the questions there that I can analyze quicker as well. So it's a really good way of getting feedback from your community, if it's a community survey you're doing or your client base, okay? There is a free version there that allows you 10 questions, which is probably enough in a lot of cases, but you are limited to 100 respondents, okay? So you can only get out 100 people, and you are kind of limited in terms of the type of questions you can ask, right? But for a lot of organizations, that's pretty much okay. If you're dealing with, say, maybe 50 volunteers or 20 volunteers, 30 volunteers, and you only want to ask them 10 things, that's perfect. This free version is fine. The one I'm using is this one. It's €30 per month. Now that's costly if you're only doing a survey once every now and again. It's not worth your while spending a lot of money on SurveyMonkey because not using it enough. We use it a lot because we have to access. So if we do a survey, let's say a year, 2 years ago for a group, they might come back to us like this year and say, Tom, we did a survey there 2 years ago, we lost the data, we can't find it. If I cancel my subscription, I can't go back in and access those results if I haven't saved them. So that's why I would use the annual subscription, and I use it a lot anyway. So it's worth my while from a business point of view. Again, I said from the community point of view, it might be worth your while. Use the free version, or you can use Google Forms. And Google Forms is using the Google platform where you design your own survey on Google Forms. You've unlimited surveys, unlimited responses, and it does allow you to collect information as well. It is one I haven't used that often because I use SurveyMonkey, but it is one that I see a lot of my clients using because it's free a lot. So a lot of community voluntary organizations doing surveys would use Google Forms more so than SurveyMonkey because it is free. Again, it's relatively easy enough to use. The great thing about online surveys is that you're not asking someone to manually fill out a survey, paper-based survey. You're not asking to put it back in a stamped addressed envelope, post it back to you, or drop it off somewhere. If you were sending out 10 surveys by post, you're probably looking to get back maybe 2 of them back, because people have to actually drop it back to you or post it back to you. If it's a form, Google form or SurveyMonkey online, they just tick boxes on or they type in answers if they're opening the questions, okay, and then hit send and it's gone. They don't have to post it back, they don't have to do anything with it. So it's a very, very quick way of doing it, okay? The great thing from your point of view is that it's already analyzed for you. All the analysis is done by the actual software. But it is something that you should be doing from, if you were on previous workshops we did on grant applications, on preparing for grants, you have to have a needs analysis completed. If you're going for any grant, you got to show why you're doing it, why you think it's needed in your community, who's told you it's needed in your community, and how can you justify the investment in terms of the equipment or the facility or the program or whatever it might be, right? So if Caroline and Kerry PPN are going to be going in for another training links program funding under the next round, they've got to show, well, we've done a needs analysis. This is what we've identified as a need within our community, within all our members across the county. They've said they needed more training on X, Y, or Z, okay? That can be backed up by a survey, and the results of that survey is saying that 80% of people said they require more training, 70% of people said they require more training on finance or something. And then you can say, okay, the reason why we're developing the program based on this is because this is what people asked us to do. There's no point saying, oh, we've anecdotal evidence there that you're having a chat with people over coffee, they said they want this, that, and the other. That won't do anymore. You have to back it up with data. And the only way you can do that is by surveying your members, your clients, your community, okay? And the only way to do that fast and efficiently and effectively and getting back the most respondents is by doing it through an online survey. So I'll give an example. We did before lockdown, we used to public consultation meetings. We used to mostly get people to fill out surveys at a public consultation. You might get maybe 50, 60 people turn up to a public consultation. Sometimes 100 people turn up to it, depending on the area we're working in. Since we moved all our consultation online through surveys, we've seen the response rate probably treble. So the last survey we did for community plan, for village plan, we got back, large study we did for large plan, for large area, we got back 280 respondents came back with their opinions in terms of what they want, what they didn't want in their community. So when you're trying to argue a point then to a funder or to a local authority saying, look, this is needed, you can back it up saying, well, 280 people said it's needed. So if you've got a population of an area that's 400 people and you've got 280 of them coming back saying we need X, Y, and Z, you can pretty much say that's needed in your community. Okay, so you have to be able to back it up, and surveys allow you to do that very efficiently, very effectively. Okay, plus as well, because you can print out the data as chart forms, tables, as graphics. It just makes it nice when you're presenting it from a point of view, from a planning point of view. Or if you were doing, say, an annual report and you want to get feedback on the work you're doing, you did a survey of all your clients and your service users. So let's say it's a creche or childcare, and you ask the parents to fill out a survey about, the good and the bad things about the creche over the last 12 months. You could then get the findings of that, and you can put up the findings in terms of people's responses in a graph format or in chart format on your annual report. Very visual, very effective. If you're going looking for funding, you can say, look, that 99% of the people that are using our creche here, the parents find it fantastic. You might be able to survey the kids by using an online survey, but you can certainly survey the parents. Okay. So again, this is useful in terms of grants and useful in terms of reports, in terms of just getting your message out there. Design then. So if you're looking at design, so again, you're talking about, say, your surveys, you're talking about your website, you're talking about your flyers, your posters, your invites, your fundraising campaign design. You want to kind of make it look as professional as possible, right? So you want to make it look kind of cool, catchy, grabs people's attention, right? Same way that any company would out there that's trying to sell a product, they're trying to get people's attention. They're spending a lot of money on designers, graphic designers, brand specialists, this kind of stuff, right? You won't have a huge budget or any budget for this in terms of doing it very professional. Now, if there's any graphic designers here that are doing graphic design or I'm related to graphic designer, forgive me, because I want to show you how you can do a lot of this for free. But what I would suggest you do, if you can, is approach a graphic design company or freelance graphic designer or web designer in your local area and say, look, we really need a professional poster done for a fundraiser. We haven't got a clue what we're doing in terms of design. We design matchstick men like this. That's why they're up there. That's our limit of our creative skills, right? But we need something that's going to look better. Can you do it for us for free? Okay. And if you do it for us for free, design for free, we will make sure that people know you did it for us, and we're down as a sponsor, as a partner, whatever it might be, and we'll give you acknowledgement of it. If they say no, we're not, then ask them, what's the best price can do for, and if you can afford it, then pay for it. But if you're doing stuff on an ongoing basis, and this is more so about ongoing things, right? Like if you're doing, say, monthly newsletters, if you're doing, say, constantly doing, say, post campaigns for events. So a lot of you might have centers and you're doing, like, say, yoga classes, Zumba classes, IT classes, training room hire, meeting room hire, Meals on Wheels, whatever it is, right? You want to get that message out there regularly. So you want to have something that looks professional when it goes out, because you're trying to portray a professional image. So we work a lot with community gyms, for example, and some are very, very good at the design. So it looks really professional, looks like a proper gym. Others then they're kind of going, geez, like that's it looks pretty shocking, looks very, very amateurish, and that just thing gives the image or the kind of the perception that is a run kind of amateurish as well, and it's not, it shouldn't be, but perception is reality in a lot of cases. So we use Canva. I use it for my own business, and we use it a lot in HQ. So all the stuff you see from HQ Kerry or HQ Tralee on LinkedIn or on social media channels is all done by ourselves in terms of just basically posts that we put up in terms of design. So Canva's brilliant for things like, say, designing presentations, Facebook posts, flyers, infographics. So if you want to use infographics, so all those kind of graphs you can use for infographics for, say, reports and for kind of get your message across kind of in graphical format. It's got very, very good templates for that. Things like, say, your templates for presentations. So I use Canva a lot for, let's say, if I'm doing a PowerPoint presentation for a project, if I'm designing, say, a project report. If I'm designing maybe, let's say, a short kind of executive summary for a large feasibility study, I'll use Canva. Because I don't use InDesign or any of the publishing software because I can't use it. I've never been trained up on it. Plus, they're expensive, and I just couldn't be bothered learning how to use them, to be quite honest. So I use very easy, very kind of user-friendly platforms like Canva. They're not expensive, but they're a really good thing. If you're doing a lot of, say, social media posts, they're brilliant for that. If you're doing a lot of flyers or post campaigns, digital flyers that you're emailing out to your client base, your community, very good as well. If you're designing presentations for funders, very good. Again, video, pretty much everything. You can do pretty much everything on this, okay? The other one then for more template-based is what I use more so is Envato, right? So Envato is basically a website where you can download templates for pretty much everything. I use it a lot for PowerPoint slides. So like you can see, this is a PowerPoint one. And it gives you kind of the slides layout. So they're all pre-designed slides with layouts that you can use to follow. So if you're not great at designing things or visualizing things or being creative, these are literally just kind of designed for you already. I use them for that. I use them also for reports. So if I'm designing, let's say, kind of a very high level feasibility study for a large project, it's got to look really well when it's published. So it's got to have very well laid out. Images have to be well positioned on the page. Planning drawings will be in there as well. You've got charts, got tables, you got financial information there. It's got to read very, very well. And it's got to look very, very good in terms of if you're being paid money to do something, it's got to look professional. So you don't want to send off like a Word document with kind of word art stuff on it, things like that, right? And it's got to look more professional. To get a graphic designer to design that would be very costly, because you can talk about an 80-page report, could be cost equivalent to the project. So we use templates on here on Envato. So what we do is you can sign up for a plan. So the plan would be €14.50 per month. The great thing about it is once you download the template, okay, you can cancel the subscription because you got what you wanted off them. And you can cancel any time, or you can keep it going for the year if you want to. But it's got things like your music. So if you got to say these YouTube videos, and I'm not going to do, and I won't be suggesting we do a card line, but if you want to put like a soundtrack to the back of this, you can download a soundtrack that's already just got copyright exempt or whatever, and you can use these things. So we've used it for we did a fundraising video for a project years ago. And we had a videographer, and we wanted some music to be in the kind of the start and throughout it. And he was coming back to us with crazy prices for licensed music. We spent on Envato and downloaded some licensed music for €14.50, and it worked out fine. Sound effects, graphics, they're all there. So again, if you want to use, like, say, logos and stock images, if you want to put stock images on your sites or on your reports, whatever, again, they can be very expensive. You can access all these things for the $14.50 a month. So again, it's a good tool to have if you're looking at design in any shape or form. You can also use, I don't like saying it because I don't want to take business from local businesses, but you can also use Fiverr.com. So Fiverr.com. That's basically a freelance site where you can get everything starting from Fiverr. So you can get, like, say, logo done, presentation template done. I've used them in the past. I don't like using them because I like to use someone local that if it's gone wrong or it's not right, I can talk to them, I can meet them and have a cup of coffee with them, and they're local businesses as well. Whereas you're dealing with someone that might be in Bangladesh or in India or in Canada or in New York or wherever, and you get something back from them, it's not really right. You're kind of back and forth the whole time, and it can end up costing you nearly as much as it would to get someone locally to do it. But some people love it and they use Fiverr for everything. Have a look at it. I don't encourage it, but it is there. But certainly Canva and Envato would be the two I would go to. Websites, if you want to build your own website, not advisable, to be honest, unless you can know what you're doing and you have an eye for design. So website builders, there's tons of them out there as well. The ones I use are Wix, Weebly, Squarespace. Wix is the one I use most. You design a good site, but you need to kind of an eye for design. So the thing about these things is that they provide you with the platform to build something, right? So it's like someone giving you a paintbrush, a tin of paint, and a kind of how to paint guideline, right? But if you pick, pink walls for a room, or you pick black paint for a wall in a room, or whatever, you pick some kind of weird color that's not going to look well because you don't have a clue about design, it's going to be the same thing. So even though you're given the tools to use it, you need to understand how it's going to look like on the site. So we've seen people use Wix, and from a practical point of view and functionality, they work fine. You go into the website, there's a website, it works, it doesn't break, nothing goes wrong with it. But they use images they're the wrong resolution, they're the wrong size, they're being kind of squished together. They use different types of fonts that look terrible. They use weird color schemes. They don't have any, they're not optimized for mobile. They're just kind of a mess, right? So, and then they ask, and sometimes they might have a payment function on there. There's no way in the world I'm giving my credit card details to a website that looks like it's being built by an amateur, because I'm thinking I don't trust the site. I don't know where, if it's secure or not, so I'm not going to trust it. So some people can use Wix and Weebly because they know about design. They can build some fantastic, amazing sites, and fine. But if you don't go to web design to do it, if you're going on the online donations side of things, or you're looking for an e-commerce functionality on your website, absolutely use a web designer, okay? Don't try to do it yourself, because if it goes wrong, you need someone to be able to maintain it and manage it for you, okay? So again, we would be encouraging everyone to have a website. Some people say, oh, websites now are, thing in the past, it's all about social media. I don't think so. I go to website before I go to social media. You can find out what you're looking for about an organization, click on a website, you can through social media, because you can design your site where it'll have about you, what you do, the projects you're involved with, the services you provide, the facilities you provide, all these things that are very, very easy to find and navigate through a website. They're not on a social media page, not on a Facebook page. That Facebook and social media is going to post things and give information about, what's happening now. Very difficult to go back and actually, find, details about the staff, about the team, about whoever's there. So have a website. If I'm a funder, first thing I'm going to do is go onto the website and get information about who you are, what you're about. If I can't find it, I'm going to go to the next group and see what they're about. So it will benefit you. It does have to be overly expensive. You don't go and do crazy stuff, but it will cost you some money if you go to a web designer, okay? These are some of the pricing on Wix. For example, just to give an idea of the pricing. So, you can use for personal use, it's €8.50 per month. That gives you access to your domain. You still need to purchase the domain. So your domain is like your name. So your .com, your .ie. You got to purchase that. You can purchase it through Wix. You can purchase it separately through domain hosting company. It's like VIP Unlimited. I think this one I'm on is $14.50 per month for Wix. I Wix my own website. It's brutal, so I'm not going to use it anymore. I want to get a professional to do my website next time for me. But that's just some pricing. So it isn't free, but it's not expensive. Video conferencing, I'm going to cover the next day on the training in more detail. Now, you might think, we're out of COVID, we're all back meeting people again. Sure, what's the point in video conferencing? We've learned that this is definitely the way forward when it comes to community work, because you can get an awful lot more people more engaged, because you're asking people to go to meetings where they have to drive, to get there. Normally it's in wintertime where a lot of things happen, because summertime is a disaster from a voluntary perspective. So you're asking people to go to places in nighttime because they're all working during the day. They're tired. The last one to do is get in a car and drive somewhere. Okay, so we had a meeting last night in Mitchelstown. First time in 2.5 years it was on the road. 2 hours up there to meet in a room It was for a community plan. 19 people turned up. The previous one we did on Zoom with the same place in Mitchell, 28 people turned up because it was on Zoom. So it is definitely something to look at from a team's point of view. A lot more efficient, a lot more effective. From a training point of view, it's something certainly should keep going regardless. Being there. I'm not saying we forget about meeting people anymore and we don't meet people anymore. That's really important. It's very, very important. But a lot of things can still happen online through video conferencing, through Zoom, or through Teams, or through Skype. The ones we're talking about next week are Zoom, Teams, and Skype, because they're ones primarily that most people use. In terms of just some people use the free versions of them that are limiting. Probably fine for most groups, but it would be worth looking at maybe like the licensed version of it if you're going to be using it a lot. And I think Karen was saying last week that the PPN also have access to Zoom as well that can be maybe shared with groups as well. So it's something to be very, very useful. But
absolutely, Tom. And just to come in there, because it might be handy for next week as well, when you're doing the whole webinar and the conferencing and things like that the PPN, we do have a Zoom account, and it is available for community groups to use as well, because it's trying to create that resource that will save community groups that we have it here. So just for groups to remember that, and if they're looking for it for a particular meeting or whatever, to just contact myself or Eamon and we'll arrange all the details.
Fantastic. That's a really good resource to have, because a lot of groups are using the free one. Now, some groups do use a free one on purpose, so that the meetings are finished in 40 minutes. So we have a team that we work with on in Park C, a fundraising team, field development committee team that we work with, and they refuse to use the paid version, because I said I'll host a meeting because mine's paid and I have unlimited access. Like, no, we're going to stick with the free one because we are going to finish in 40 minutes. So at 40 minutes is the shutdown. So you get your work done in 40 minutes. So it can be useful. But definitely in terms of if you're doing webinars, hosting larger meetings or that, absolutely to use the PPN account would be brilliant. Again, some people are used to using Teams. So they I know a lot of large organizations will use Microsoft Teams. Local authorities will use Teams more so than Zoom. And I'll go through them in more detail again, as I said, next week. You've got Google as well. So Google Meet. I use it. I don't use it, but some of my clients use it because it's free if you've got the Google Workspace subscription, and it is relatively free or cheap for the basics version of it. But not that many people are using it. Again, look, use what you're most comfortable with and what your clients or your team or your staff, your volunteers are used to using. That's why Zoom has come up, because everyone's on it. So everyone uses it, even though that was unheard of probably 3 years ago. Only very few people heard of it. Other tools then. So outside of the things we talked about this morning, these are things that are, I suppose, you're probably familiar with most of them. But again, something that I would certainly recommend you look at using if it's relevant to you. So the first one is Google Analytics. So if you have a website, you want to analyze, who's going to your site, what, how long they're staying on the site, where they're coming from. Okay, important if you're using your website from a fundraising perspective. You want to look at analyze, traffic and where they're coming from and what they're doing. If you're not using the website, obviously it's not relevant to you. But if you're using websites, talk to your web designer about setting you up on that as well, in terms of how you can analyze and monitor and manage your site. Mobile banking apps. You're all probably on online banking at this stage, and if you aren't, you won't have to be. Again, if you are looking at an online banking, you got to have protocols around that within your organization in terms of who's got access to the online banking app. Okay, who's got permissions to admin permissions to sign off on payments and transfers. Okay, everything we do now is from a company perspective is online banking. So I received a check and I don't know how long. Not that I have no business coming in, but I've received a check. It's all electronic transfers. I haven't filled in a check in God knows how long, because everything I do is, again, it's transferred electronically through the bank account. Again, when you're looking at online banking, have a chat with your bank around setting up properly that you can access all your statements. Some banks, their online banking, and they're not the best. And you don't have access to maybe loan accounts, stuff like that. So again, just check what they have. Look at pricing as well on it. But the key thing is looking at access, who's got access to and permissions for that. Very important that you've got all the security checks and all that. So if you've got your due, I know Bank of Ireland now, you go into your mobile app, you have to confirm it through your phone. So you've got a kind of a two-process confirmationing, which can be a bit of a pain if you don't have your phone with you, or if you've got another person that's trying to access it and they don't have the second phase of the confirmation. So just check that's the ones that are most useful, but you're probably on them already. Revenue Online Services, again, your accountants are probably doing your returns for you, but if you're doing payroll yourselves, again, you'll have access to ROS, to Revenue Online Services. If you're looking for your tax clearance details, your tax access code, if you're tax compliant, again, you'll be using ROS to get that information. And again, most companies will be registered with it. If you're not, get your accountant to register you on it, because you want to be able to access that information as well. Because you're the ones responsible for your own financial management, you should be accessing ROS yourselves directly rather than your accountant just doing it for you. If you have an office or premises, look, you're going wireless with everything. So, this is probably, again, there's a kind of, I suppose, not the environment here as well, but try to go paperless if you possibly can, right? So I'm trying to create a paperless office here. So everything I do is done through PDF, emails, invoices, all that, I'm trying to get signed up for all emailed invoices, online invoicing from suppliers, etc. Again, if you've got, say, a number of people working in the office, wirelessly connect to your printers, all this sort of stuff. There's an awful, some of you might have this stuff at home, kind of smart houses with your Google Assistant, all this kind of stuff, right? Some people kind of goes way over their head, or people are just obsessed with it. Get in someone that is kind of a nerd when it comes to things like this, and get them to basically set your office up, or your homes up for that matter, to make them wireless, right? So, they'll do it, they'll set it all up for you. You can do it yourselves, but just you're trying to maybe figure it out. And they'll set it all up for you, and then they give you your access controls on your phone, everything like that. So we did it here at home. It's not a smart house because there's all the functionality, and I'm not into how to set it up. So we got a guy in who set it up first, and it's all set up for you. There you go. Show us how to use it. And it was done. Now we paid for it, but it saved me like 10 hours of YouTube tutorials to figure out how to do it. This one here is something that is something you could look at doing, and something to start to look into. If you've got a community space, like a community center, that people are accessing for meetings or for training purposes, or for evening meetings or whatever it might be. And normally what happens there is that you have a situation where you have people that have to open the doors, let people in, let people out. Caretaker has to go down, close up at 10 o'clock when everyone's finished or whatever it might be. I know we use it for our offices where we've got remote access, so we can leave someone in remotely. So if someone rings the doorbell or the intercom in our office, we can let them in from a mobile phone. So no matter where we are, we just hit the hashtag on our phone, and it leaves them in and opens the door for them. Okay. I know one or two community groups are looking at this as an option where, rather than them having to have someone be there to let some people in, let's say the person that's organizing the event, so it might be a Zumba class, for example, the Zumba class trainer or instructor, whatever, will get to the door, ring the intercom, it goes back to the caretaker or the coordinator. They say, "This is Mary, we're here at the door," they've left in, and they can go in themselves. But when they come out, obviously the door closes behind them and automatically closes behind them. It just saves in time and work, but also as a way of monitoring who's in and out of your building as well, from a security point of view, from a safety point of view. And it's also a good way as well in terms of people are just using the facility, they can only get access if they're paying for it. So we have another system where if they book online and they book a room or book a meeting room, they get a code into their phone, and their phone becomes their key. Okay, so the code's into their phone, and they put a phone up to the Bluetooth reader. It opens the door automatically. If they try to get in the following night then without paying, they can't get in because they can't access it. I know one or two clubs do it as well. If they're renting out AstroTurf pitches in the evening times, they'll have the gate on the maglock, and they'll open up remotely by someone either opening remotely or codes into their phone. They get in, and then when their hour's up, they leave, and the gate closes behind them. Okay, you can do the same thing with lights. You can actually remote access for lights, remote access for heating, all these things. Okay. Again, talk to some security companies on that. There's lots of them out there doing it, and they'll advise you as the best system to use. You probably will get grants for that sort of stuff as well, for improving access. You'll also get grants to look at smart heating systems and smart heating controls. So there'll be grants for that because you keep your energy costs down, where you can control heating from the phone. So you're not just sitting on timers and someone turns it on, a panel heater at a meeting, they leave, get trapped heater and the heater's on for 12 hours and costing a fortune. The same with lighting, with LED lights, you can get monitors on the lights so that someone gets trapped with lights when they're leaving the building, they'll go off automatically after a few minutes. So there's lots and lots of ways of automating these things that would save you time, save people having been on site, and also save you money. CCTV cameras, again, remote CCTV, link back to your phone so you can see who's in the building at any one time. You got backup on your cloud storage as well. So if someone breaks in, you have it on your phone, you have it backed up in terms of a file. Then your office setup is into something we talk about next week in terms of the equipment that you can buy that will, for calls and stuff like that. Then finally, there's a list here of online tools. Again, this will be on the link when you get the PDF of the slideshow. So this one has got top kind of business tools. Now the word business is there. It's the same type of tools that you can use for your organizations. Social media tools, there's 2 websites here in terms of, good social media tools to use and how to use them. So these are just kind of the top ones that are being used at the moment. And it's got kind of tutorials how to use them properly. So, spend a bit of time going through these, pick ones that you want to use. I suppose just to wrap up, you don't have to go down a technology route at all. Some people are just allergic to technology. They have no interest in it whatsoever. They hate it. They don't get it. That's fine. There's no issue whatsoever with that. And some people think that technology is above them and they can't figure it out and it's too complicated. I'm not big into technology. I'm not a tech person at all. I can do the basics. I can do what I have to do because I've learned how to do over the years because of had to. So it's a necessity really. But I don't use half the functionality on my phone, half functionality on my laptop. I don't use a lot of these things, to all the features and most things I have. I don't use all the features. I use what I have to use and what's relevant to me. Okay. What I'd be suggesting to you is look at how you can use, based on this morning, what technology is out there. Most of which is free or relatively cheap that will make your lives more easier to manage, increase your efficiency and effectiveness. Okay. Allow you to communicate better with your community, with your clients, with your stakeholders. Allow you to do kind of more automated reporting. And allow you to look more professional. Okay, that's you don't have to be a guru in any of these things. You don't have to go off and do courses on any of these things. It's just basic tools that we use. It's like when a mobile phone came out first. People thought, "Jesus, we never use this because it's too complicated." Then we all use. Now we know we can't live without it, right? We're on it the whole time, constantly. So you kind of learn these things after a while. You don't need to be expert in any one of them. I use Excel a lot. I am not an expert in any shape or form on Excel. I can use the basics of it, but that's all I need. Okay, I have no interest whatsoever in an Excel training course because I only need certain amounts of things I use. So you don't have to be brilliant at all these things. It's just figuring out what's going to be useful for your organization and what will lead to you being more effective and more efficient in your organization. So check there to see if there's any questions on the chat first. Okay, there's no. Okay, no questions. Great. Have you any questions?
Explained it all great, Tom. Thanks very much.
Is that what they're all going? Not a hope. So any questions before we wrap up or any comments on it, or do you find it something that you find you will use?
Actually, Tom, to be honest, you gave me food for thought, and thank you for a great session because it really was an eye-opener to me because I think the last 2 years I was just learning as I was going. But the one thing that I found, well, it really stuck with me was for the social media and coming up with a policy around that because it's not something I quite haven't really thought about. And yet the PPN, we use the Facebook and we have our website and the newsletter as well, but particularly on the social media. So it's something that I must look into with some detail.
Yeah, no, I think the policy one is hugely important because a number of groups I would have worked with would have gotten in trouble because of social media. Where there was stuff put up on their page they weren't aware of because there was no monitoring it. They were monitoring like once a week, which is not monitoring at all. And it was too late. The horse had bolted, and there was no quick response to it. And it went to the point where it got to local press, national press. It got very, where they were hiring a PR consultant at big money per day to solve it for them, because just no one really took notice of it. So it's important to have social media. All the policies in terms of IT policies, very important with social media. Also with access as well, because GDPR, who's got access to your files, your online banking, very important, and also online security as well, in terms of IT security. So again, looking at your backups, things like that, because if you have grant information from, say, Pubble or Look Authority or Leader, and all that information is there, and you lose it, you're in serious trouble then with your funders, because you're supposed to keep that file on file for, is it 5 years, and but from an audit point of view. So you can't say, well, my laptop was stolen out of the back of the car, and my life and the organization's life was in that laptop, and we don't have anything backed up. That's a disaster. That is bad news. So just simple policies on that.
Yeah. Actually, Tom, there's just one coming in now. Had a quick look at Wave. It seems restricted to US, Canada. And it refers to European partners.
So Wave, the last one I used, it was Wave. It is a US based one. The last one I used, I can't remember whether it was a true European partner it had. But if it's free, if it's free for 12 months, it's free. But again, look at the local ones, the Irish ones. They're about 29, 30 euros roughly per month. But from a reporting point of view, it'll save you an absolute load of time.
Yeah. And just to let everybody know now, and thank you all so much for joining us this morning. I think it's really well worth coming along and finding out about all these online technologies and informing ourselves. But we will be circulating out the presentation to you all in the next few days. And we'll also have it, the recorded version, up on the YouTube channel as well. So it just gives you an opportunity if you want to go back and check something out. And also you'll have the notes going hand in hand. And in the next little while as well, we'll have the notes up on our website and hopefully the videos as well. But again, that's a pretty technical one that myself and Eamon will be checking into. So thank you all so much for coming along, and I hope it was well worth your while. And hopefully we'll see you next week at our webinar and Zoom meetings. It's our final hurrah. So thanks, Tom, and thanks very much, everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks,
Take
Tom.
care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Caroline. Eamon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. God bless.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.